Sound check. Hello, everybody. Good to see we've got some people joining us. It's 4:29. I'm going to start in 1 minute. Okay, the screen is very fuzzy here. I don't know why. It's also on a delay, but hopefully I can manage going back and forth with Q&A, muting myself while I watch myself on YouTube. Not not the best thing to do. So I'm going to go to the Q&A via email, and we'll get started here. I'm just going to run through this, guys. You know, just to make a comment beforehand, I would say that it's so important, and you're going to hear this probably, I'm guessing, throughout the Q&A, and that is that we are in an environment with gold, silver, mining stocks, commodity stocks, junior miners. That's terrible. It's really, it's really a situation where many folks believe, as do I, that we are in a market that is as bad or potentially even worse in some cases than late 2015. And the run of the mill for really all stocks in this space, but the exceptions, which seem to be the companies that have discoveries, and those are the companies that are seeing activity in the market with their share prices rising. But if there is not active drilling nor discoveries, then, you know, it's a very similar tale for everybody. So keep in mind that, you know, if I'm dismissive when you ask for an update about a particular company, because of this situation in the sector environment, it's because that's what I believe is the main cause of the stock being down. And it's just very important to realize that, because that's going to help you determine as an investor whether or not you want to wait for the environment to improve, or you just want to punt some of these stocks. We're coming into the end of the year. It's a good time to check yourself, check your portfolio, you know, look at what your plan is for 2019, take some losses if you need them, you know, rotate some funds, and, you know, and really just decide what you want to do with these investments. So starting off Q&A, Roger asks, with regards to CCW, that's Canada Cobalt Works, do you see a bunch of strategic partnerships or outright mergers among the junior players in the cobalt camp in order to give their various assets some economies of scale and efficiencies? I'm thinking of CPO, which has a large land base, and First Cobalt Corporation, which has a mothballed mill. Okay, and there are likely others. So I think, George, that this is a good question in terms of the bigger picture in cobalt, and certainly there could be a consolidator that starts to move this situation forward. Canada Cobalt's in a unique position because they actually have a separation technology that works. They're actually producing, they're the only producer of an actual cobalt sulfate project. They're underground, they're fully permitted, they have very high grade cobalt. It doesn't look like this is going to be a huge deposit from where it is at the Castle mine, but it's very high grade and very rich. And so that is going to lead to opportunities for these guys to really be producing product, and they are already. So when does that turn into commercial revenue, et cetera? I'm not exactly sure. They're a little vague on that, and I think that's because they have various moving parts that they're going to want to tweak along the way so that they can maximize the actual product and sell it to their Asian customers, which they've been talking with now for a year and a half on specifications of what they want for their product mix. In addition to that, the Re2Ox separation technology is something that I think you're going to see a number of the cobalt camp companies approach Canada Cobalt about, because they've got real issues with high arsenic levels and other problems that the Re2Ox can end up really helping with, and that could be a business unto itself for Canada Cobalt Works. What I would say is that there's no clear company that would bring in that consolidation right now, but I would actually keep an eye. I think the name of the company is called Battery Minerals or Battery Metals. I forget which one it is, but they're a private company that is looking to go public in 2019 and probably very early in 2019. They have gobbled up some significant land adjacent to Canada Cobalt Works. They have been drilling. From what I hear, they're extremely well financed. And so they could do a reverse acquisition to start. They could bring in a couple of acquisitions to roll this up into a cobalt camp type of a play. Ironically, the one who I would see as one of the more likely candidates at the moment is the Battery Metals Group. Battery Minerals, one of the two, and they'll be public sooner than later. And I'll follow up on that once we see more of their details. But that's the word on Canada Cobalt. Because we're going to have some probably other questions on CCW, I will just reiterate that I believe we are going to see that stock retest the 90-cent area. That's going to be sometime very soon. We've broken out as of last week at 65 cents. It seems to be a very sticky area of resistance for this stock, but I believe that on any real good news, and we did have high-grade results out late last week, any additional drill results, a discovery near their mine that looks like it could be a gold new discovery. A number of different things could be a catalyst for Canada Cobalt Works to make another big run, not least of which is the potential turning of the sector. We're seeing not only life, but we saw big moves in Canada, in Cobalt 27 and also in First Cobalt, FCC, the last couple of days. So we'll see if that's sustainable, but it's actually been miraculous that CCW has performed the way that it has since May, trading up from 20 cents a share in spite of the cobalt price getting cut in half, and a lot of these cobalt stocks more than cut in half. So it really has outperformed in a massive fashion. So that's something to appreciate. Josh, maybe better served in an email video rather than the free list. Okay, so I'll take that. I'll take these one by one, depending on if they're free covered or not. Okay, so this situation about Hilltop Security, I don't know if we cover that in free, not right now, so I'll wait on that. That's a blockchain crypto play. Patriot Gold. I'm going to comment on Patriot, and I'm going to comment on Patriot, but I'm not going to get into all the details because there is movement, and there's going to be movement between some of the largest shareholders and the management of the board of Patriot, which has not been looking out for the best interest of the shareholders. And it goes beyond just lack of execution. There's been some governance issues that have come to light. If you dig in the filings, you would see what we're talking about. I'm not going to get into it yet because what I believe is going to happen is I will give Trevor Newton and the company an opportunity to roll back very egregious issuances of preferred stock. That is a very big hindrance to our rights as shareholding voters. And it's very, very concerning. If they roll it back and it's a moot point, then we'll address this as a flat out investment opportunity with the Moss Mine royalty, which has kicked in. The company this month is going to receive close to around maybe even over $100,000 from that royalty. It's kicking off major cash flow, but at the same time, we have a board and a management team that has been MIA up until this point and now are doing things that are concerning to shareholders. So if they don't want to roll back what our main issue is, then we're going to have to decide as a group if we want to go after these guys or not. I'll explain in more detail very, very soon. I'm hoping next week. It's a very mixed situation in that these guys are now moving into a really, really strong situation with cash flow. And at the same time, there's just very disappointing actions by management and the board. And that seems to be somewhat of a theme with some of our companies that you're going to see today. And then there are decisions to make around, a lot of the assets, I believe, still have, nothing has changed. They have great value. But when management doesn't execute at some point, we need to cut our losses and say, you guys don't deserve to have our money if you're not going to do your job. So more to come on Patriot. Bear with me. I know I haven't had a really detailed update on this deal for a while. I'm going to, like next week, the week after at latest, and I'm going to address everything. Arcana, I did cover this briefly, I think, in free. Mostly it's a premium held deal. We did a financing at 20 cents. The Orca merger, for those of you that did the private placement at 20 cents like myself, we've been locked up for months. It will reopen. It looks like, I think probably in December now, not necessarily in November. They've got to raise the last $1 million of 10 million to complete the actual merger, which they're working on right now. At the end of the day, I like the asset. The asset is terrific. But the question is, does it make sense to give away 3/4 of your company to acquire an asset when you're already trading for a discount from the Shafter asset? And my answer to that is, I don't think it made sense. I think it was too much to swallow. And I believe that it's going to very much limit our upside from what I had thought was going to be the case with just betting on the Shafter situation and having that silver upside and exposure. I get, that they wanted to put in a really good world-class asset in here, which it looks like they did. But again, it comes down to, did the economics make sense? And it's not a terrible deal, but I don't like it. I really don't. At the end of the day, I think it's one of those situations where we will make money, but it just won't be one of my core positions to hold throughout the silver bull market. And I will have a thorough update, probably with even bringing management on to discuss it before it opens again, so we can all, make an educated decision on how they weighed that all out. And that's the area that I would press him on. It really, they've got their reasons for it, and that is because of the asset quality. And I have a tough time justifying it. Jaeger Core, which is now Gellum. So this thing has been a pain in the ass and a pain in my ass for years, and many of you as well. And I would say that, first of all, it's not dead, because they got out of Argentina and they've renamed it and they did a rollback, and they're going to put something else into this vehicle. The thing that I can't tell you is, number one, I don't know when it's going to trade, because they have to put a business or an asset into the vehicle to then apply to start trading in the stock, which isn't going to be a tough thing to do. Once they get that done, they'll get up to date, and then Gellum will then be trading. But the issue is that I just don't know how motivated the board is to get a deal done here. It's one of those situations where it doesn't surprise me that it's taking a long time. I'm talking with the largest shareholder and board member next week about it on Wednesday. I'm expecting the worst in terms of just the timing. I feel like I've already written this stock off as a loss completely, and I would actually encourage you guys to do the same, so that if it wakes up one day and we actually have some real value there, it'll just be a psychological bonus, if anything. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do here other than just wait. And if you want the tax loss in 2018, I don't know if there's anything you can do there to officially write it off or not. You probably want to talk to your accountant about that. Maybe there's a way to do it. I don't know. But listen, we had some big winners this year, but when we're going to have the biggest capital gains issues are going to be when gold and silver start to rock, and we're going to have very big issues with needing to take losses. And I'm guessing that is not going to happen yet in 2018. So just be patient. When there's something, here's the thing I think you guys have to understand, particularly with the free list. Premium members get an email from me almost every day during the week. I mean, it's literally every day or every other day. And I bring out, short updates on a number of different things all the time. And premium members have just a lot more information. For free members, what I tend to do is I have a couple of times in a market like this where I'll try to update everything. But in the interim, I send out an update on one or two stocks, and then people are saying, well, what about this one? What about that one? Well, listen, you don't pay anything for the service. I've given you ideas. I try to add value to the free list, but I'm not going to update a company every month that isn't doing anything, that there's nothing going on and nothing has changed. You know the situation. Half the time, the answer to that is just be patient or sell it. That's the attitude that I have with a lot of people who want super frequent updates to appease your own impatience. I get it when a stock is down and nothing's going on, it can be frustrating. But in most of the cases that we have in the gold and junior and silver junior mining sector, even if it was uranium or whatever, which is now starting to perk up, it's the sector, it's the environment in the market, it's the commodity behind what these companies are looking to find or have as an asset that affects it the most. You have to look at it through that lens first and say to yourself, Bravada, it's at 6 cents. Why is it at 6 cents? What did they do wrong? Well, the only thing you could really say about a Bravada is that what they did wrong is they aren't able to do any work because they don't have any money. So they have to sit idle and pull back and not spend what comes in different private placements. But nothing has gotten worse with their assets. Their assets are their assets, and they've actually had work done on them in the last 12 months to improve the value, if anything, of the assets. So I look at that through the lens of the stock's in the toilet because the market's in the toilet. And that's the general consensus. However, we have companies that have activity and discoveries that are being rewarded. But it's not that the general market is hot. Those are absolutely exceptions. I mean, you're talking about 1 out of 20, 30, 50 juniors that have a discovery and their stock skyrockets versus the latter, which is the constant just decline, over the last couple of years since we peaked in summer of 2016. Roger, I just was talking about, what was that one? Well, I just talked about Jaeger Core, Arcana, Patriot Gold, and we're moving on to the next one. So then Brian, glad you're bullish on cryptocurrency. I was wondering if you could comment on specific crypto blockchain stocks like Datametrics, Global Blockchain, Calyx, to name a few. Would they make a comeback if cryptocurrency again soars? So listen, I don't cover this in the Gold Investment Letter, these small stocks. We have other newsletters and services that do. And I do talk about blockchain and crypto recommendations in the premium GIL. But the answer to your question is they will all come back if crypto soars again. Crypto is down. The blockchain crypto stocks are down. It's the same premise. It's the same premise with any sector. It doesn't matter if it's cannabis, crypto, utilities, gold, technology, software companies. I mean, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, medical devices. It's the same thing, guys. The general market, the overall stock market, probably has the most to do as a backdrop of performance, but that's only like 20% of the performance of a particular stock. Probably 60 to 70 is the sector that it's in. And then the last 10 or 20 is specific to the actual company. That's what I learned a long time ago, and I absolutely believe it. So when you look at all those charts, Datametrics, blockchain, Calyx, whatever, they're the same. So what do you think will happen if crypto, Bitcoin starts to get hot again? If there are companies that are mining crypto then their value is literally going to shoot up with the cryptocurrency. So absolutely those things will soar again. I'm very bullish on crypto longer term. I'm very bullish for 2019. I've been adding to my cryptocurrency positions very consistently for the last 6 months, and now have a very meaningful position in crypto and in certain stocks. Updates on Metallus and GGI, why the share price dropped from earlier in the fall, and where you see them going in 2019. So, I mean, listen, GGI and Metallus have not performed up to my expectations so far this season. And so, Claude, I appreciate that comment. Met with management of Arcana at the Precious Metals Summit. They will be consolidating other assets, so that we should do very well. I will follow up with you, Claude, tomorrow on that and on another company that I had hoped you were going to meet. But Claude gives some positive view of Arcana. Garibaldi and Metallus have not done what I had hoped that they would do to start out the season. However, let's talk about Garibaldi first. Look, they're onto something big here. There is no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind that they're onto something potentially massive. The problem I think that we have to deal with, and this is on your mind and it's on my mind as well, is we have a very seasonal area. The winters are very long, okay? And so we've got another couple of months, most likely, before everybody's drills are shut down, and then the drill results are tapering off to the final ones. And then you're going to see people looking at this long, cold winter where there's not going to be a tremendous amount of activity for 5 or 6 months. So therein lies the stress, and therein lies the opportunity. My suggestion, and I do believe that at any time, I believe that Garibaldi can end up continuing to come out with good news, which they have so far this season. And now with these large, big step outs that they've been doing, if they start to expand this high grade or underneath that ice sheet and, you know, significant football fields away from where the discovery zone with hole 14 was last year, where they ended last season, then you are hole number 9, I believe it is. You are going to see the stock trade better. I think one of the issues that I may have underestimated is the weakness in the market, along with the fact that we started the season out at a $300 million market cap, which is hard to hold on to. You really have to prove up a lot to keep a market cap like that and continue to go higher. And with the pressures in the overall sector, I don't talk about this much. I don't believe that short sellers are behind every decline in every junior stock. I think it's one of the most overblown things that people talk about on chat boards that don't understand how shorting works and how many entities are out there that do it. But something like a Garibaldi, with the liquidity and size that it has, can be a target for short sellers. And I believe that based on activity after each news release, there has been some absolute intention behind driving the price down, which is fine though. That's the thing. People want to call this manipulation. Well, it's not manipulation. And if it is, it's temporary if there's better value there. And actually shorts can end up driving a stock way higher than it should go in the first place, because they have to cover their positions and they get squeezed. So if the market gets excited about Garibaldi and what they're finding, things can change very fast. We saw, a few weeks ago where the stock was $1.40 in the morning and then closed at $2, and it had a 40% run in the afternoon on news. It didn't hold that, but that's the type of thing that can happen with Garibaldi. And I'm very bullish long term. The opportunity that I mentioned, besides the stress, is if you want to buckle down and just say to yourself, as a long-term investor, I'm willing to hold this for another 2 years, or at least through next season, then you don't have as much to worry about. And in fact, you're going to continue to build a position, and it will pay off. Will it pay off this drill season? I still think it could. I still think that we could see Garibaldi pull a rabbit out of the hat in terms of its stock performance and make a very, very strong move in November and December. I do believe that not only could happen, but that's what I'm betting on. And Metallus, I will say this, I believe Metallus is a screaming buy, and I'm prepared to do just what I said with Metallus. Now, Garibaldi, it's my lesser position. I own probably a fifth of the shares in Garibaldi as I do in Metallus. The last 2 weeks, week and a half, I've been buying. I bought another 175,000 shares of Metallus on top of a 200,000 share position and a 100,000 warrant position. It's a big holding for me now. And part of that was because, Fiore Alperti was at the Phenom conference, gave us an update. One nugget I'm going to give you guys that he told us, which will be public when I distribute the videos. But for those of you that are tuning into the Q&A, what you may want to know is that Fiore has said that with Dr. Peter Lightfoot and their team, what they did this summer was walk the entire eastern border. So Thunder North is up here, okay, and Nickel Mountain is right up above it. Thunder North is where we are banking on the structure coming down from Nickel Mountain to be the high-grade nickel and copper ore, and that's really what we've been looking at. But Lightfoot and the group has said we can confirm similar geology all the way down the right side, if you're looking at the map, the east side of the Kirkham property. So what does that tell me? That tells me there's massive potential in numerous areas for this high-grade nickel and copper that we weren't expecting before. And I think they're going to release more information on what they found there. That's not from drilling. It's from a lot of surface work. Geophysicals, sampling programs, they got into waist deep water through the rivers, and they did a lot of work, and they're really enthused. And Dr. Peter Lightfoot apparently was very surprised by the fact that this is a very highly prospective nickel copper structure that goes down on the border with SK Mining is where this all comes out, not on the side of Colorado Resources, but on the border of SK Mining and Metallus. What I will also say is I have a feeling that Metallus hit something in the south. And part of the reason for that is simply that if you look at the gold copper, the mostly porphyry targets that are down in the south, it's the Nina, the Cole, the King, which they drilled all these. The drill results are pending. Rodney Kirkham, which this goes back a long time, I think probably 50 years ago, long time ago, Rodney Kirkham, who had basically staked all this stuff, has really, the focus for Metallus when they redid this deal with Fiore in charge, with packaging this land package up, was the gold copper was the big hit. The nickel was a big surprise. I think the nickel is what could drive us significantly as well. And certainly with Garibaldi moving, we get that kicker. With Garibaldi going down, we get a headwind. But what could separate us from Garibaldi is a very high-grade hit at one of the 3 other projects that they drilled this summer. And I just think that based on all of the data that they've got down there, this is a very well-known red line. They call it the red line that goes through Kirkham's property, which is very gold, copper, porphyry rich. And I just think they're gonna hit something good. As we saw with GT Gold and with some of these other companies that hit really high grade, good intercept discoveries, their stock can fly. And Metallus only has a $16 million US market capitalization versus Garibaldi, who's up in the 125 area. 125, I think US is where Garibaldi's value is at. So we've got a ninth of the valuation of Garibaldi, and things can change fast in this business, guys. That's why we love junior exploration. All we need to see is a hole released that just changes everything. And so let's see what happens with Metallus in these drill results. We're going to continue to get the benefit, I think. Well, I hope it's a benefit. It's been a liability recently of going along with Garibaldi, and certainly that could even be enhanced with the disclosure that they believe that this nickel copper structure comes down along that entire eastern ridge of Kirkham, expanding the entire footprint of where they will be able to drill next season for nickel. But there's a lot of potential. There's just so much potential in the triangle. You have to realize that Metallus is surrounded by, we have this situation at Nickel Mountain, which looks like one of the richest nickel discoveries in the world. 8% plus nickel, high levels of copper, 7 different minerals. I mean, this thing is very robust. They have to absolutely prove out the tonnage and connect the dots to see how big this is going to be. But when you're starting with that rich of a grade metric, you're in a good position. You've got that to the north. You've got Seabridge. You've got Pretium. You've got Snip. You've got all these different, this is in the SK camp. All of this stuff in the Golden Triangle is where elephants are found for ore deposits. And Kirkham is a prime piece of real estate, and it's also very, very large. So I'm excited about Metallus. I'm excited about it more than Garibaldi, as I have been in the past, but even recently, much more so. And I would suggest averaging down in Metallus, if you haven't already, while it's below $1. And I'm very bullish. Let's move on. This is going to take a while, guys. We're a half hour in. I've only gotten a few questions, so I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit. Okay, Chuck, disappointing losses in GUG, and the other one that you mentioned is a premium pick, and we didn't necessarily have a loss there. It depends on where you bought that recently and potentially sold it. But okay, noted. New lows in GGI. I'm in need of a winner or two. I have a large negative position on GGI. I would like an update, and also updates on FVAN and CCW. So you have your Canada Cobalt update from when we started. You just had your GGI update. And First Vanadium is one of our shining stars, obviously. It's really buoyed entire account values for a lot of the elite members who financed the company at 14 cents and did it with a 24-cent warrant. You know, we're up about 18 times our money right here, and it's been a real winner. I've taken a very, very small amount of my First Vanadium off the table. I own, with fully diluted with the warrants, I'm still like 2.7% of the company. I mean, I sold like a fraction of a percentage. So it was just small profits that I literally did that because I said to myself, no matter what this company is or what they're doing, if I don't sell anything and something blows up in the world and it goes back down, I would not like myself. So I took a tiny bit off, but I'm betting with, 90% of my position, 95% of my position for higher levels and taking a big bet from these levels. I mean, this is where I have 7 figures on the line right now for First Vanadium, and I believe that everything is in its favor right now. You've got to look at these things first and foremost from the price of vanadium, which has been killing it, and I'm actually glad that it's finally cooling off a little bit this past week. The fear that we came up with, at the Phenom conference was the risk is that vanadium keeps going up too high instead of pulls back, because you don't want anybody to get discouraged with the new technology of vanadium redox flow batteries, even though that's only less than 10% of the driver for demand. It's mostly steel applications, but I'm glad it's cooling off. But that environment has got us in a sweet spot. In addition to that, if you look at the sector, you look at Largo Resources, which is the absolute pure play leader, producing in Brazil, printing money at these levels. The stock just again today broke a 52-week high, closed at 459. You have to watch that stock because we will follow it. And the thing about First Vanadium, and we also saw Prophecy today, which is I think a very inferior exploration story to First Vanadium, but they do have a vanadium asset in Nevada. They've been out there telling their story, so good for them. They've gotten out of the gutter, and their stock has actually been breaking out and doing well. And they had a new high today also. But the reason I think you're seeing Prophecy and Largo continuing to hit highs is because, and First Vanadium hasn't yet, if you look at First Vanadium, we've come up significantly much more in the last year than the price of Prophecy or Largo. For example, what I'm saying is we financed this at 14 cents. It's gone up tenfold since last October. And, Prophecy was at 14 cents 5 weeks ago, and it's at 64 cents. So it's a big move. It's like a quadruple, but it's nowhere near us, as well as Largo has not come up to $4.50 from, it did come from a very low base back in late 15, early 16. But in terms of the last 12 to 18 months, we've been the number one performer in the space. But the good news is I hope they all do well. If the sector does well, First Vanadium will crush it. They just came back from Precious Metals Summit in Zurich. I believe they had a lot of good meetings over there. They're going back to Europe in 2 weeks. I have a lot of meetings set up for them in London, which could bring them significant institutional awareness, which is the real next step for us in the market for this thing to go to $3 or $4 is going to be proper institutional marketing and getting them involved in the story. And there's a lot of really interesting things in the pipeline for First Vanadium. And then not the least of which is that they've got, what do we have? 16, so 53 more holes remaining from this drilling program this summer, which is going to increase the size and the grade of the asset and the resource, which will be out sometime probably by the end of the year. They were saying end of November. I don't see them getting all 53 holes out in the next 3 weeks, but if they can get everything out by, Christmas, maybe they end up doing the resource right after the first of the year. In any event, this thing is growing. It's looking terrific. It's a very shallow deposit in Nevada, very good grades. This thing looks like an absolute winner across the board. You're talking about a potential mine that could, with vanadium prices where they are, be printing hundreds of millions of dollars a year in cash flow. That's what we're looking at here. There's a lot of upside left. And listen, Chuck, I feel you on Gummear and GGI, but listen, this is another one of those things. We started buying Gummear at a penny. So it depends on when you joined us and when you started to buy it. If you just started to get excited when I was getting super excited after it started to pop when we saw those core photos a couple of months ago, that's fine. But, we had a long time coming to be able to buy this thing. And, we're still up 10 times our money from when it started. If you're down, you're down. I'm going to give an update on that in a moment. I'll do it now. So Gummear, because I'm sure a lot of you want to hear about this one. Here's the down and dirty. Okay, we've got some more. Last time we had dead presidents that were coming on the YouTube chat. This time I don't know what we've got here, but it's I don't think this is the dead presidents. All right, so Gummear is a situation where I'm excited on the one hand and I'm disappointed on the other, because I'll start this by saying with the results that have come out so far this year and talking with Jari Paki, the CEO, I believe that they are potentially on to something big in terms of a VMS deposit type discovery in Sweden. That's good. That's great. However, I'm not buying anymore because the CEO does not want to talk to us as shareholders. He talked to me, but I'm not his employee nor investor relations person. And I had requested strongly that they make it to the conference, which he declined. And then I said, in lieu, we need to do a webinar to update your shareholders, because we own over half of this company for sure, maybe even more, much significantly more than that. And he said he wanted to wait until after they get more results back. They're not going to comment too much on it. And I call bullshit. And I think it was a huge mistake, because I am not buying any more stock while that's the case. And I'm not going to recommend that you buy any more stock while that's the case. At some points, guys, and they could be on to the biggest discovery on the planet. I don't give a shit if they're not going to talk to us as shareholders and communicate. They're out. I'm not selling it, and I'm not selling it here, but they're out in terms of being a priority for me to stick my neck out and recommend these stocks without a management team or a board of directors that is willing to do their job and communicate with shareholders. It's not doing anything special. It's stupid that they declined the conference, and it's even dumber that they declined the webinar. So I'm not happy with Gummear's management. I am, however, excited about the prospects in Sweden. They have the benefit of not needing to raise money. They have $1 million a year coming along. They're going to have almost 900 grand in the bank at the end of this year after the drilling, which is good and bad too, because I think that they're being very conservative with the money, so they're not blowing it. However, why do you have 900 grand at the end of the year when you probably should have $500,000 less than that, especially if you're onto something that you're excited about? Drill it. Get more work done. That's my attitude with Gummear, and it is a place where drilling can happen year round, folks. So that's not a question of a weather situation. But the last time that I talked to the company, they were already pushing towards a spring time frame to do more drilling. I certainly hope that either one of two things happens. One is that they just change their mind and get out there sooner, or that the holes 8, 9, and 10 that are pending, which could be out any day now, I hope that they got closer to the vent and come out with some real high-grade numbers on the zinc, nickel, copper, whatever that they've got there to get people excited in the interim. That would certainly help. If they don't, and it's another few holes that are similar to the smoke, as they call it, that they found in the last drill results, then the stock could go back to a nickel. That's just the fact of the matter in the short term. But again, you stretch out your timeline a little bit longer with Gummear, and I think that there is tremendous potential, but we need management to get on side. So I'm sorry to be, a little bit negative, it's seemingly all of a sudden, but I have to roll with what I deal with behind the scenes with these management teams and board of directors guys. I basically represent all of us when I have these discussions, and I have a few pet peeves, and this is one of them. It just doesn't make any sense. If you're uncomfortable saying this or that, then don't say it. But say you're a geologist who's been doing this for 30 years or more. In the case of Gummear's CEO, he's a specialist in the nickel area. He's got a storied career. Add some color about what you think you are onto in Sweden. I mean, they talked about a bunch of it in the press release. Just elaborate on that or put it into layman's terms to help people understand. Nobody's asking you to hype anyone up or speculate on anything that you shouldn't be speculating on. It's just about being communicative and educational so that you can keep your shareholders excited or at least patient. And that's, again, unfortunately, sometimes with the best, most exciting assets and or situations, if management just doesn't cooperate, guys, I go sour pretty quick in the sense that I'm just not going to continue to support these deals. Doesn't mean that I'm going to sell them, and it doesn't mean that I'm not going to support them in the future if things lead to that change and direction to do so. But in the interim, I am uninterested. Let's see here. Robert K. Garibaldi a bit, which we have. And listen, so everybody's got Garibaldi. I talked more about Metallus, but I will say that I think if you liked Garibaldi before, you absolutely should be buying more now. I mean, the thing is near $1 a share, and it's near its lows that we've seen. Excuse me. And there's nothing fundamentally that's come out with their drill results that has got me less excited about the way that Nickel Mountain is developing. I think that there is going to be a big winner here at the end of the day. And the only real question with Garibaldi is if you don't have the time, if you've got bills to pay or you don't have the patience, you probably should just sell these volatile stocks anyway. You shouldn't really be playing in them too much. But neither here nor there, because there are situations that I think are going to pop in the shorter term, and I mentioned that, so fair enough. But for those of you that put an investment into Garibaldi, you should be buying more. And if your timeline is that you're just getting impatient for whatever reason, that doesn't have much to do with the company now, does it? It has to do more with the performance of what's been happening and your personal displeasure with it. But, in this case with Garibaldi, I've been buying more there as well. I've been buying more Metallus than Garibaldi for the reasons that I proposed already, but I remain very, very bullish. I think this is one of the most exciting discoveries in Canada, one of the most exciting nickel discoveries in the world in the last decade or two, and there's a lot more to come, guys. I mean, Garibaldi, there is a lot more to come. I did mention, I just see a comment here about the 92.93 cent piece that I put out Friday. I think that it's that's where the chart kind of tells me it's going to go, but you're at $1.20, you're at $1.15, you're at $1.25. Is it going to go to 92.93 for sure? No. I mean, they could come out with news tomorrow. They come out with news a lot on Fridays. They could come out with news tomorrow and the stock could close at $2, just like it did a few weeks ago. So keep that in mind, and mainly the 92.93 cent price tag that I threw out there. Really, for me, it just gives me the mental preparation that if it goes there, oh well. I mean, it pretty much looks like it was going to do that, and it doesn't mean that anything is like changed fundamentally. So, and if it does, then I'll buy a bunch more in the mid-90s. I think that would be the absolute bottom. But we're at the point now where if you think Garibaldi's a $5, $10 stock or even higher in time, whether you're buying it at $1.95, $1.30, $1.20. I mean, it doesn't matter that much. And then the whole situation with the fraud comments and the elevation. Listen, the Golden Triangle is not a really super easy place to be drilling or mining, but look at Pretium. Pretium's right down the street. They've got the very, very robust Brucejack mine. It looks like, with Garibaldi, if you're talking about an underground situation, you can drill a hole in the side of a mountain. So I don't think that the actual treacherous terrain, if you will, is any sort of a cancellation on whether this is going to be a mine or not. It is not a fraud. That's what really gets me, is people saying it's a fraud. They may not have what we all hope that they have there, guys, but nobody's falsifying or smearing drill results. I don't think that that's the case. So stay tuned on Garibaldi, guys. The story's not over, okay? None of this stuff happens as quickly as we want it to either, which can be very frustrating, especially with these Golden Triangle deals that have a window of drilling and then the labs get backed up and they take forever. I mean, look at what happened with Metallus with their first holes from the Cliff target. I don't know if it was the Cliff or the King that were out a couple of weeks ago, or last Monday it was at the conference. They started drilling that at the end of June, and they just got the results back. It's like 4 months. I mean, it's really frustrating, absolutely, that the labs take this long, but there doesn't seem to be much that these companies can do about it. I will be suggesting strongly that managements that are serious in the Golden Triangle, if they have to pay some extra money to get things back quicker so they can go back and drill based on those initial results in the same season, they need to spend the money. I mean, if you're looking for $1 billion worth of ore and you have to spend an extra $1 million in a season to get this faster, you do it. Let's see. Golden Predator. What's the problem with Golden Predator, Raymond? So Golden Predator, Raymond, you email me only about this stock all the time. My first recommendation to you would be to buy some other stocks. If you own other stocks and you just have something about Golden Predator, what I will say, and this may be overly simplistic, but I think that it's true, none of which have gone down as much as Golden Predator. So I think you got probably part of my message around the sector is all doing this, but you're saying Golden Predator is going down more, and you may be right. But why is that? Is it because of something that they've done or news that's come out? They haven't really said anything in the last freaking 6 months. They've had a little bit of news, but it's been nothing really material. But the reason it's down more is because it was up more. in the 2016 run. Golden Predator was like top 5 percentile in performers, if you recall, and you pull the chart up. I'm pulling it back now to look at this from 2000 and late 15, when it was at 6-7 cents, early 16, 10 cents a share, 10 cents a share to $2. Southern Silver was our biggest silver winner, and it went from 10 cents to 65 cents in that time frame. Golden Predator absolutely was a monstrous mover in 2016. So it doesn't surprise me that it is now retracing more than the rest of the sector. What I do believe in general, and it's got to be specific to the company that they're going to end up having the right opportunity for this to come true. But for example, like Southern Silver, Bravada, they were also really good top, definitely quartile performers in the junior sector in silver and gold back in 2016. And the Bravada's come back way more than Southern Silver, probably because they're just a little less advanced. But I will say that these are the exact stocks that I would look at for the best performer again when things turn back up. They were out of the gate big monsters. They've fallen off even more dramatically percentage-wise than the rest of them. And going back up, they could be as dramatic as they were last time. So, we have to take the good with the bad in terms of performance a lot of times. Again, it is a backdrop of a terrible environment in the sector. But, Golden Predator will be like a rocket ship once the junior gold sector improves. So that comes down to, Raymond, it comes down to this. If you're bullish on gold and you're bullish on the juniors, buy more stock. If you're not, sell it. Simple. Okay, Neil. Bitcoin has been building a base for the past roughly 6 months in the 6,400 range. What catalyst do you see kicking the crypto world up again, and why, i.e. the approval of the ETF? Well, that is one of the things, Neil, that will certainly be a driver. We're looking at, I think, probably a February approval in 2019 of the first Bitcoin ETF. But there are a number of things that are going to end up driving this market. And it could be a million things. It could be central banks taking a position in Bitcoin. But the biggest driver, I believe, is simply going to be 2 things. One is adoption, more usage of crypto, but also in the form of asset allocation, adoption of Bitcoin and crypto as an asset class by institutions will be the biggest driver for Bitcoin and crypto prices over the next 18 months, in my opinion. And a lot of the kinks that were holding that back, which comes down to, for example, custody. If you're a pension fund and you want some crypto in your portfolio because it's not correlated to anything, it's got high beta, you want to have 1% of your assets in it. So you're on board with that, but where do you store it? You can't put it on an exchange if you're a custodian for, 14,000 firefighters retirement fund. You can't put it on some exchange when you're reading in the headlines every other week that somebody's getting hacked. You need a trusted custodian. And we're seeing that now. Everybody from Fidelity to Goldman to a lot of the Wall Street firms have got those in place. They're putting them in place. They're making it easier to buy. They're making it easier to store. That means that the actual crypto will be insured, guaranteed by these other financial institutions. The financial institutions like Coinbase that have had this custody platform in place for months is great, but Wall Street doesn't know these guys. They do know Fidelity. They do know the bigger players in the space. And so that is going to end up being a big deal. James Logan just said TD's doing an exchange. I hadn't heard that. I'll look into that, James. I mean, that's exactly what I think will bring adoption and investment up when people have a trusted name and platforms that they can invest in. Look, the bubble burst. This was a bubble in December, no question about it. It burst. It reminds me exactly of 2001, 2002 in internet stocks in the NASDAQ. the movements in crypto seem to be faster and more condensed. So what took 2 years, 2.5 years for the NASDAQ to bottom wouldn't surprise me if it only takes a year, year and a half for the crypto market to bottom. And there's just tremendous opportunity in this space. It comes down to some of the simple principles, just like we use in a lot of the miners or in gold or any other sector. You have to do the Warren Buffett thing, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when other people are greedy. I wasn't fearful enough back in December because long term, I'm a believer that Bitcoin is probably going to go to hundreds of thousands of dollars per Bitcoin. And I started hearing that back late last year, and I just brushed it off. I'm like, what the hell are these guys talking about? How do they know? What would they base a $500,000 prediction on? And now I see it. I see with just modest amounts of allocation to this stuff. I mean, for example, if every millionaire in America wanted one Bitcoin, there's not enough for us to each have one. And crypto, in essence, I think has so many advantages to fiat currency. Even Bitcoin as a digital gold has advantages over physical gold with its digital aspects, certainly. Easier to store, easier to send. Doesn't mean that I'm less bullish on gold. I think that the key to denting the corrupt fiat debt-based society that we live in is going to be a combination of sound money backed by gold in the physical realm, Bitcoin in the digital realm, perhaps silver, monetary hard assets, as well as digital assets that have not an unending base of ability to be diluted. So I am super bullish on, I think Bitcoin is going to shine in the next bad market, in the economic environment, debt crisis, whatever we start to see when this thing does turn sour. Bitcoin, I think, will be a bit of a haven. We haven't quite seen that correlation yet, but I do believe in time it's going to act sort of more as a like a safe haven like gold, and really be exciting to have money in that space when the rest of the world may be crumbling. But there's a ton of catalysts. I just think, when you look at the trading too, one of the catalysts is that we're basing. We've been basing for months. The volatility is very low, which is uncharacteristic for this area. So it's going to break out in one direction or another very soon. I shouldn't say very soon because these things can base for a while, but I do think it'll be much sooner than later. And the selling is dried up, quite a bit. And the fact is, it's very, very strongly held that 6,000 area, give or take a couple $100. If we broke below whatever that previous low was, I think like 5,800 or something, then we could see it could go to 3,000. It could go lower. I'm prepared for that. I've been buying Bitcoin very, very steadily almost every week since April, but certainly every month. I bought a lot of other cryptocurrencies as well. I would encourage everyone to have at least 1% of your investable assets, at least in Bitcoin. You could buy Ethereum, you could buy Litecoin, you could buy some of the speculative stuff, but mainly just Bitcoin. It's just like if you're a gold investor and you own a bunch of junior miners, you should first and foremost have some physical gold in your portfolio before you worry about that other stuff. Bitcoin is obviously the brand. It's the biggest, it's the best, most well-known, and I think it'll stay that way for a while. So now is the time. If you've held off, or even if you're underwater, listen, stick with it, because I think that we're going to see a soaring of value that will even blow away the last run. And if you remember how aggressively Bitcoin rose late last year, it was astounding to watch, and I think it's going to happen again in a bigger way. Top altcoins, I'm not going to get into that here because we have premium services for that, and I'm going to stick with the gold investment letter stuff for the most part. Cryptos that are truly decentralized or not, I'm not going to get into that either, Neil. You wanted to talk about the implications of utilizing crypto outside of the U.S., withdrawing funds and things with accounting. I think that the way that I treat that, I'm not going to get detailed, nor am I an accountant. How I treat it as an investor for myself is I plan on paying capital gains similar to what I pay capital gains in stocks, reporting long or short-term capital gains with things that I make. But there's probably loopholes out there. There's probably ways to keep the stuff elsewhere, or buy it and send it elsewhere. You shouldn't have a penalty if you say, you have 100 grand in cash in your E-Trade or your bank account, and you want to buy crypto with it and send it somewhere where it's being stored in Singapore. You don't have to pay any tax on that. It's if the 100 grand turns into 500 grand, and then where is the domicile, and what are your implications as a U.S. resident? So lots to learn there, but I just plan on paying tax the way that I would pay tax. Okay, I'm going to go to some of the chat box questions here. Don McDowell, thoughts on the Timberline discovery on the McEwen JV? Very, very crafty there, Don. So Don McDowell is one of the new directors and one of the main drivers behind Timberline Resources now, since they did the acquisition of buying out his firm, America's Gold Exploration, which basically vended in the Elder Creek project with McEwen Mining. Paiute, the project, which is with Gold Corp, I believe. And Don is a very prolific prospector in Nevada, also was responsible for optioning the Carlin Vanadium deposit to First Vanadium. So I'm happy to have you on board, Don, but my thoughts right now about Timberline's management and board. It is the same situation that we have with Gummear, which is that they're in timeout until we see some additional changes. I know things have been moving forward. I think the problem you have right now, Don, is the timing with you coming in and some of these stupid actions and decisions by, the legacy board. And you know what I'm referring to. It was a last straw for me in terms of incompetence and just being foolish. And I want to see that board move further, which I know is happening. We've got one entity who won't be renewing in November, and I want to see if you guys can raise them 500 grand without us. We've supported this company for 2.5 years, raised well over probably $3.5–4 million for them. We own the bulk of the stock in the company, the majority of the stock in the company. I'm excited about what you're tapping into at Elder Creek. I think that you're onto something. I had an opportunity to talk a little bit with Paul Cowley at my conference, who confirmed. Paul, by the way, is a geologist and the CEO of First Vanadium, confirmed that he believes you're onto something big and will be putting money into the private placement. So that's very, very promising to hear from him. And, it certainly looks like from what you guys have released so far that this could be a really exciting porphyry discovery, gold, copper, and there is great potential there. But, I'm just not doing much until we see further execution and reasons to get more excited. And part of that just simply has to do with rebranding this deal, as and it's going to take a little bit of time. So I own a lot of stock. I'm not going anywhere, but I am not happy still about the most recent decision by the board, that very well what I'm talking about. And, I'm not going to continue to pound a table with people just because you had a couple of good holes and we've had years of disappointment. It's got to turn the ship around a little bit more. Hopefully you guys can raise that money and you can put most of it back into the ground, which I will say has been a positive since Don came on. They've been drilling. They've cut back on salaries and costs and have started to move forward with actual drilling and putting money into the ground, which is what we have not seen for a long time. If that continues, I'm sure that there'll be a day where I flip back onto your team in a more proactive way. In the meantime, the best I could do is be neutral. So we'll see what you can come up with. I hope you continue to drill out this discovery and get everybody excited. Will GUG be releasing more results this year? Yes, Ian, I think that they'll be out this month for holes 8, 9, and 10. GGI has hit the bottom and the flush has happened. It didn't hit the 92. We talked about that. Do you see Mux being profitable in 2019 with the Nevada mine coming online? I see it slightly profitable. Chris, you know, the real leverage with McEwen is in a gold bull market. You know, McEwen will be one of the best performing stocks you can own in a rising gold. Certainly copper will help as well, but certainly a rising gold environment. They've got a lot of leverage, you know, could really be printing money, but I think that that's going to require a couple $100 additional ounces per gold price. But you know, Nevada, it's a good little, Gold Bar is a good little project. It's not a huge project. It's definitely going to add incrementally to their production numbers. I think the Black Fox purchase that they made up north from Primero has got better potential to add to the bottom line. There's a lot they could do there. And so that's kind of what I'm watching a little bit more closely. However, you know, I hate to say this, but it just doesn't even really matter, you know, in this market, what the hell they're doing. You could have companies that are actually doing better on their cash flow. And even like if with Pretium, they come out with a strong quarter, stock pops for a day and it fizzles right back and goes right back down. And so that's the environment that we're in. It's really going to take a change of environment to capitalize on why I bought this stock and continue to buy it. My goal, though, and I'm really excited about this, is I want to own well into the 6 figures of shares of MUX before the market starts to take off again. And I'm getting there. And I'm doing that across the board with like top 5, top 10 gold, silver producers that I think are best of breed deals that I can put real money into. And it's not going to be a junior exploration wildcard situation because these producers are going to see massive leverage once the gold price starts to make its move. So I think that you can bank on MUX for the long term. In the short term, I don't think it's going to necessarily be based too much on the Nevada mine. Equinox Gold, I don't follow. I believe that's Ross Beatty's deal. I just looked at it briefly the other day and then I got distracted. So I'll look at it again, Nicholas. Super bullish on MUX long term, best of breed holding, no doubt about it. You're right, too. You have to pay attention to these serially successful owners. It makes a huge difference. You know, when you have Rob McEwen running a company or Ross Beatty, you just know that they're not going to screw everything up. You know, these guys know how to get things done. They know how to move forward and get things to the finish line to create value. I mean, the fact that McEwen still owns 24% of the shares outstanding and he's got like a, I don't know what it is, but maybe $1.50 or $2 cost average for his own shares, and he takes a $1 a year salary. He only has one thing in mind when he wakes up in the day, and that's creating value for shareholders, and that's going to go a long way. Particularly, think of it. You know, we have a lot of diehards in this area right now that still believe in gold and silver, but when it gets really interesting is when gold is $2,000 an ounce, and then every Tom, Dick, and Harry is learning about gold stocks and trying to get exposure and learning about people for the first time. And then when they start to hear about a situation like Rob McEwen, who owns, you know, all the stock, he takes a $1 salary, he did what he did at Gold Corp. It's like the first stock they're going to buy. You know, it's the same thing with the Ross Beatty deal. They start to see these guys that were successful, and that also has to do with, and especially with the institutional investors, the generalists that are not active in this space whatsoever. They don't even have a dime allocated into gold and silver miners. Once they do, that's the type of company, these are the type of companies that are going to be at the top of their list. So, you know, it just makes sense that you put bigger money into these deals than you would, you know, some of the smaller ones. Bob, LOL, I don't know if you're laughing because of the content or if I made a joke, but talked about Timberline, talked about Gummear, and talked about a little bit about Southern Silver and Bravada, which are really in the camp of like, you know, I've bought more this year in both. They're quality juniors. We have a super high quality silver asset with a ton of zinc in Mexico, partnered with the Electrum Group at Southern Silver. Stock price is depressed, like every other silver stock price is depressed. They have money in the bank. They continue to move the project forward. I love the company long term. It will have its day in the sun, and it will be a superstar performer one day again. What can I say in the interim? You know, either hold the stock, buy more now while it's cheap, while people are selling for tax loss purposes and are not very price sensitive, whatever you buy down here under a quarter with Southern Silver, it's going to pay off in spades in time. Bravada's the same way. You know, I called up Joe Kaisis about, I don't know what month it was, maybe it was in June, and the stock was at 8 cents. And I said, I know you guys are low on money. Why don't you take $175,000 from me and maybe another 175 from some of the guys that invested before, and let us, average down and get some cheap stock in the books, and you can pay some bills. And so they accepted that deal, and I put in, a lot of money for me at 8 cents a share Canadian, and now it's at 6 cents a share. So I thought it was of the ridiculously cheap ilk at that time. I usually don't call and offer somebody six figures unless it's something I feel is just getting stupid cheap. But that was the case with Bravada, and I don't know any other way to really show my confidence other than my checkbook in this particular case. They've got 1 million ounces of gold at Wind Mountain. They have a dozen projects in Nevada, high-quality geologist who's been around the block. I mean, there's a lot of things that this company could do to monetize that portfolio in a better market. They've just struggled to move forward too much, with things suppressed. So I am very confident, and I don't even know what I own of Bravada now. I actually have to check because I might be more than 10% of the company, in which I would have to do a filing. I don't think it's there. I think it's close though. And I was thinking about buying more today, and I was like, I better check this. So I have a huge position in Bravada. I bought another probably 200,000 shares of Southern Silver under 20 cents. So I had to maintain and have increased my position there. And these are, some of these go back to like the usual suspects that I was really bullish on when the market started to move in 2016. And I felt like I was plucking the best of breed stories in the exploration area. And a lot of these, still maintain that same deal. And that's as long as they don't do something stupid, like we saw with, management teams of other juniors that just like, for whatever reason, they screw up, and then it makes you pause. But if they just continue to move forward, or they don't make any big mistakes, like the assets are the reason why we own this stuff. And the main reason, even though absolutely you can bet just on management, because successful owners, if they were to go into the earth and the earth did not treat them kindly with drill results, they'll find an area that will, until it's successful, because their name is on it. So, definitely something to weigh out, but I'm very bullish on Southern Silver, Bravada, and really on Gummear and Timberline too, in a better market, even though I'm upset with them at the moment. GBR or WHN, I don't cover them. I'm not going to comment. Orca's activity with the definitive and large sell order. Dean, I didn't see the close. Let me check it here. Okay, it was sold off, but it basically closed flat. And I don't know the reason for that. I mean, the feasibility to me, and I looked at it, I didn't glance at it. I looked at it more than a glance, but I was pretty much expecting what they had here. This is a world-class asset. We just had Rick Clark in Miami at the Phenom conference talking about Orca. I'll distribute that to everyone probably in the next 2 weeks. We're having everything edited right now. And then you can hear it right from him. My bigger concern was what's going on in Sudan right now. They're going through some real economic troubles. Inflation is up at 60% a year. There's some social unrest in some of the bigger cities. I was worried about, even like the king, who has ruled for such a long time and been very stable, has been under some pressure lately, and they are not seeing any issues. They feel very confident that the government is strong. So that was more of an alleviation for me. The economics on Block 14, this is a world-class asset. They've got a lot of really good momentum going on in Cote d'Ivoire. And I probably will release, I'm going to definitely release it to premium members. I don't know about free members, but we did a special segment at the conference, which was about Redback Mining, which is the Orca team, and their last deal. And that is a deal that they took from a shell to a $9 billion exit. And so I wanted to get into the story of Redback. And on the theme of, superstar operators, that's what these guys are. So, you've got Ross Beatty in the deal. You've got Lucas Lundin, Rick Clark. I mean, they're a fantastic group that just knows how to execute and get things done. So I'll probably distribute that at some point to everybody as well, just for an entertaining story. And there's some talk about Orca within that, some comps and things like that, but also just, you getting to know the management here will make you feel much better about the investment, regardless of whether one or two things on the feasibility maybe had somebody nervous. Thanks, Paul, on MTS. Core best of breed companies. I think I got into a lot of that already. I'm going to go back to the email questions, and we are a little over an hour in. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to keep going here until 6 p.m. Central or Eastern, because we do have a good amount more to cover, and then I'll probably just pick up in a part 2 that I'll record without doing it live this weekend, and then send that out secondly. So I really haven't even dented the email questions yet. Anne Marie, if you look, gold stocks will not start to move until gold goes over 1,300. What are your feelings on this? I don't know. Here I guess that I somewhat agree, Anne Marie. However, one thing that I'm reminded of is that stocks are a forward-looking mechanism. So this has to do with like the general equity markets looking ahead with the economic vibe that's out there. This has to do with, precious metals and commodity stocks as it pertains to the metals and what they're going to do in the future. For some reason, the actual equities have a forward-looking mechanism built into it. So what I mean by that is that when gold is going to go over 1,300 an ounce, we're going to know about it in the stocks before it gets there, because they're going to be acting much better. And that's going to be because finally gold is going to go through it. It's been one of the biggest baffling points, and it's not really baffling if we were just taking it for face value, but I was talking with, like in the summer, one of my elite members who's very astute in the area, and it was like, gold was popping at that time recently, where it went in the spring, almost was going to challenge 1,400, and then the gold stocks weren't doing anything, and we were just like, well, what's going on here? That's not a good sign. Well, maybe they'll catch up. Well, no, they were acting weak because gold was about to become weak again. And I think that when gold is finally going to act strong and go not only through 1,300, but I think when it does go through those old highs at 1,375, 1,400, it's going to go to 1,600, 1,700 bucks like that. It's going to be really fast and powerful after such a consolidation. So in theory, I mean, I agree with you, Henry, but it's something to keep in mind, because we're going to see 1,300 in the stocks before we see 1,300 in gold, if that makes sense to you. Stephen has questions about everything. The only one that I have not, oh my God, you own a lot of these. That's good for you and bad for you, I guess, at the same time. The only one I didn't comment on yet here initially was the TGRUF, which is Encore Energy. And I think that uranium is going to be a very bright spot in the markets in 2019, regardless of what is going to happen with gold and silver and even some other commodities. They're acting much, much better. They're very stealthily moving higher this time versus a year and a half when we had a bit of a more of a false start. So, let's see what happens here. I'm cautiously optimistic, and Encore is one of my favorite junior uranium stories, if not still my favorite, because from an ounce in the ground perspective and valuation, it's extremely cheap, even at 11 cents. They should still have some cash, although I do need to talk to Bill Sheriff. I'll get an update on Golden Predator, but I really want one on Encore to see what they're talking about. When we financed Encore at 6 cents going back almost a year and a half ago, he told me then, he said, because that was when things were starting to run. And he said, I think we're at least a year out still from the recovery. And so he was right about that, even in the face of some really good activity. And I will, get his viewpoint from a macro perspective. And then also that's going to impact the way he feels there on whether or not they're going to be doing anything, doing deals, doing drilling, doing this, doing that. But, there's just so much leverage in the uranium stocks once uranium starts to really go. moved up to $29 a pound, I think, this last week, which is a bit of a breakout. So if we go into, I think psychologically, if uranium, the spot price goes in over 30, which could happen like next week, this week, next week, it could happen really soon. We're not far off. Then I think that the uranium stocks will get another wind and people are going to start to get a little more enthusiastic. But for now, still a lot of cautious optimism out there, including myself. Then what do we have here? First, Vanadium talked about it. Canada Cobalt talked about it. Nevada Copper, I'm very bullish on, guys. I think that, copper is an area that long-term, the fundamentals are just extraordinary. And what I'm going to do is share a presentation by one of our speakers. It was the most highly requested document from his presentation standpoint from attendees last week, more than anybody else by far, because of the data that he went through with the battery metals revolution and how that is going to impact nickel and cobalt and copper and lithium prices. And the copper situation is just, it's wild. It's wild. And so same with nickel. I'm very bullish on nickel and copper. And, when you look at also, you'll get the update from Matt Gilley, who came to the conference and presented Nevada Copper. That's going to be very informative for you guys. But, these guys are also best of breed management. I mean, you're talking about major corporations that they ran mines in and for years. Matt from Barrick and other monstrous outfits that are on our board. And these guys know how to build mines. They know how to create value. And Nevada Copper is a substantial asset in the U.S., pure play copper, no major geopolitical risk outside of the U.S. And I think will be an institutional darling in a better market for copper. Copper and the copper stocks and nickel and the nickel stocks, these have all suffered really very similarly this year. And it's just been one of those weaker environments for the equities. However, this downtrend, I think, will get broken in 2019, if not sooner. We're on some major support levels for copper and the copper stocks right now. And I think that, Nevada Copper is simply a core holding. Mike Beck with Region Advisors, who went through the battery metals presentation, picked one stock in each sector that was his favorite, and he picked Nevada Copper as his favorite as well. And we have a lot of research on Nevada Copper, a lot of research from major firms. I'm getting a new summary of all the recent reports sent out to me by Rich Matthews of the company this week, so I can look at that stuff this weekend. And then I want to rewrite a full research report on Nevada Copper this month and talk about really digging into some of the numbers, because I think that this thing, you could look at the underground mine as a $500 million possible value, and then the open pit as $1 billion. This thing is trading at $250 million market cap. You do the math on 1.5 billion from 250 million. We're getting into the 5 or 6x category for Nevada Copper. And I've been pretty conservative with my projections about, and even Bay Street and Wall Street has been very conservative. A lot of them have their price target right around $1 and change. But this thing's got big upside. It's just going to take a little time. I think the key with Nevada Copper is you have to be a little bit patient to really capitalize, because even with a lot of these, ladies and gentlemen, here's the thing is, once they start to turn around, you don't want to be anywhere near a seller, because these are going to be a cycle. And the big gains come in the latter stages of a cycle move. So, if gold's eventually, you believe, going to 2,000 or higher, which I do, I absolutely do. I think it's going to go a lot higher than that. But if it's going to go to 2,000, once these stocks start to pop after, like Anne Marie's comment above 1,300, and things are looking better, they could go up dramatically, double and triple just with that first part of the move, like we saw in early 16. But if you're thinking about $2,000 gold, I mean, the multiples higher that this could be, and that would be years later. It's not going to be in a couple of months, most likely. It would be 1-2 years after we get really rocking and rolling. Maybe it's a year. Maybe it's a year because, you know, it did happen last time where once gold broke through 1,400, I think it hit 1,900 in like 6 months or something, 9 months. So we could see that again, certainly. But what I'm saying is you want to prepare yourself for maximizing your gains and not, you know, be of the mindset that you're going to flip out once they get a little bit better. That's a piker's game. It's a piker's game. And everybody who ends up, you know, if you don't like a company, something changes, it's down, I was wrong. I miss calls all the time. You know, I mean, this is a game that I continue to get, I think, better at, but it's a very unpredictable world, and I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. But I also react to these markets, react to the environments, right? I mean, you know, an environment like we have today, I can guarantee you that when gold is up at 14, 15, 1600, the next time we do the Phenom conference, it's going to be busting at the seams. I mean, we had a full house, but it was like I had to call people, pepper them, come to the conference. And I think now is like an environment that is fantastic for investors that can stretch your time horizon, because that's how you can really get very, very wealthy by picking off some of these plays like a Bravada at 6 cents. Obviously, if you're buying a 6 cent stock, you're not going to put your life savings into it. You know, you have to be proportionate. But I will say that, you know, for me, I'm a little bit crazy in the sense that, I mean, I have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in Bravada Gold. It's going to be, people worry about selling like, you know, a couple 100,000 shares. I have people literally that ask me, how am I going to sell it? I'm like, if you have a problem selling a couple 100,000 shares, I'm going to have a real problem selling millions of shares. But I don't worry about it because everything changes. Everything changes in a better market. The liquidity, price, the sentiment, it's completely different than it is today. And I believe wholeheartedly that that day will come. The toughest thing about all this is picking the timing, right? You know, when you're talking about big markets and all kinds of different factors that are involved. But there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that from a gold standpoint, which is the rock of this newsletter and of my entire investment portfolio, that we will have our day in the sun in a big, big way. And it's going to be a long line of people at the door trying to get in to take our stocks. And we will be in a massive driver's seat. And I think it's important from time to time to sit around and think about that. Think about it. It's not even about like hyping anything up to keep you into a stock or whatever else. Like Bravada Gold, I'll pick on them. 6 cents a share. If you're in this from the 20s, and it just keeps going down and down and down, and it's been like 2 years, it's natural to be like, what the hell is going on with this? What's happening? Eric's an idiot, whatever. But I recalibrate myself at different levels. And what I do from time to time, I know Bravada is going to go higher than here at some point, much higher, where I could profit quite a bit at, you double your money if it goes to 12 cents. So it's not really hard to envision. But from time to time, I'll sit back and I'll say, well, wait a second. Do I still believe in this stuff? Do I still believe in gold and silver as a core investment, as sound money to protect, my wealth and my labor, energy value? And when I do, and I look at it and I say, well, I've been, wrong essentially in terms of the market hasn't gone my way in the last, 2 years or whatever. But is it going to go my way? And if it does go my way, what is that going to look like? And I take myself to that place meaning like, think about 2011. For those of you that were in the sector, and you remember when silver went from $15 to $50 in a couple of months, and stocks were going to Pluto, and even like throughout the early 2000s, gold was up 12 or 13 years in a row, and 12 years in a row, every year. And gold stocks, especially in the early phase, and then again after 2009, think about how these things acted. You could have just made an absolute fortune in a condensed period of time. And the sentiment when silver was hitting 50 and gold was at 1900, just remember that. Remember how hot the space was. It's like, how Bitcoin was acting in December. That's how the gold and silver mining stocks were acting, and that's going to happen again. So when that environment returns, just back to 1900 on gold and 50 on silver, which I believe we're going much higher to new highs in the next 3 to 5 years, those levels will be broken, and then it's an entirely new ball game. But just to get back there after the big washout in the market, there's less companies to buy, there's less stories out there after this long washout of really 7 years besides a 6-month blip in 2016. Then, you know, it's incredible how high these stocks could go. I mean, it's incredible. That's why I buy penny stocks, you know, because like Bravada at a nickel, 6 cents, once it goes up to like 75 cents or $1, then it only has to go up 20% a week or something like that, which is similar to going up a penny from 6 cents, a penny in 0.2. That's the same percentage basis. But say it's going up 20% a week from $1, that's 20 cents. And all of a sudden you're at $2. And then to go up 20% is 40 cents. So 40 cents is a 20% move from $2, but it's actually, what is that? Almost 6 times your money from your original 6-cent investment. So it's not as big of a deal then when people are just finding out about it and just allocating capital and just getting into the space. But you're the guy who bought it when nobody liked it and it was in the gutter and it was trading for pennies, and the leverage can be incredible. If you get the timing right on just a few of these plays and have the fortitude and the perseverance to make it through the bad times, to sit tight for the most part through most of the good times, and maintain a core position in a few of these until the blow off top times, you can retire and you can have millions of dollars in the bank. That's the fact of the matter. That's the vision here that I really focus on, because a lot of this stuff in the interim is just playing around. It's play money, trading, this and that, but that's where we make the big money. Anyway, I digress. So I'm going to go a couple more minutes, guys, and then I'm going to end up doing a part 2 because we still have a ton of stuff to cover. Neil, I'll talk about Encore when I talk with Bill Sheriff about the listing. Silver Grail is very cheap. That's all I'll say. Big fan of CCW, absolutely. I don't know if I talked about Abra Plata in the free. I'm going to talk about it in premium. I do have an update for you guys, and we already talked about Orca. So Banaletti, I touched on all 40 of your stocks you mentioned. And then back to the Jaeger Core, guys, if you missed it, you know, we just have to wait until they announce the transaction and they go public. They get their filings right and start trading again, but there's nothing that I've seen, and I don't know where they are with putting an asset in there or what kind of business they're looking. I have a call with one of the main board of directors next week, and it will be one of my topics of conversation. I'm guessing they're continuing to plot along and look at stuff. These are a bunch of really rich guys that, you know, they're not sitting around waiting for a Jaeger Core to open back up. So, you know, it's a bit frustrating because this has just been a long cluster bomb, but they will get something in there and it will have another day, and it's not worthless. Bill, on GGN, we already went into Southern Silver. I think I mentioned this in, maybe it was you in the Facebook group. I really like GGN. The dividend still remains extremely positive, and you know, it's been a relatively stable price. I think it's a great way to sock away income and then eventually get capital gains once this market turns around. And I believe since they cut that dividend down to, what is it, 5 cents a month, or is it less now? It must be less. It's manageable. So I like it. I mean, the fact of the matter is that that's one where depends on who you are, your age, and what your goals are. You know, if income's a big goal for you, I think it's a terrific vehicle to have some money in. You don't want to have your safest money that you cannot deal with volatility or a loss on paper, because I think the key is you have to be able to hold through the bad market into a good market to really benefit from the double whammy of the good income plus the capital gain. or at least a risk of no capital gain diminishing, turning into a loss. But you know, for me, I'm so loaded into these juniors for the most part because I'm not in a place in my life where I'm really trying to be conservative, but I still like it a lot. See what we've got here. GGI Metallus, position in JNUG. So JNUG is going to be, I'll mention this even though I don't recall if this was probably more of a premium thing, but I've been talking about the miners for a bit. The actual 3X ETF trade that we did, I'll have an update in premium, but what I'll say is that we have not pulled the trigger on that third tranche. And this has been one of the trickiest 3X trades I've been a part of. It's been a bit weird, and we're going to get out of it okay. We could have sold it at a modest profit in October, but I wanted to wait for a little bit more. I don't like to go in these for too modest of a profit. So, you know, it closed that gap from August, and now we're sort of teetering along the bottom. The last bullet is for a new flush to a low, a flush to new lows. And if we get that, where it becomes much oversold again, which is uncharacteristic after already being oversold and then just not bouncing much. And perhaps I was a tiny bit off in the timing of the two tranches, but not too much from normal. So I think what I'm going to do is I've got that third bullet and we haven't pulled the trigger on that. And I will absolutely notify you guys if we do. I'm guessing that that would be if JNUG falls into the fives, and I would do that. If it doesn't, then we're going to be playing from our average, which is probably what, around 9, maybe high 8s or something with the two purchases that we did. But we're okay. It's just lasting longer and playing out a little bit dicier than I normally have seen. So I'm just trying to roll with it, and that's why I'm saving that third bullet for us, just in case we see this go down again before going up. And so we can have our average come way down if that's the case. So I will keep you posted on that. Aversi. I'm going to go with, no, we do have a lot more. So I'm going to go with a couple more for tonight. Okay, Albert Plata, Arcana, I'm going to get into more of those in premium. The Valterra situation is a strong buy, VQA, 2 cents a share. You guys are going to see an update from the Phenom conference. This company now has 3 very exciting prospects throughout North America, trading at pennies, where there could be massive leverage in a good gold market. We're talking about less than a $1 million US market cap on Valterra. If you were smart and you were having fortitude and you wanted to do something when nobody else is looking, you would be accumulating Valterra under 2 cents a share Canadian, and one day wake up and have a 10 or 20 bagger on your hands when this gold market improves. They're not going to go out of business. The downside is they can't do much work while the stock's at 2 cents because they can't raise a lot of money here without diluting too much. So my advice to them is to be patient. They've secured these really good projects. So just hang on to Valterra, buy more if you can. And let's see, guys, we've got 606. Get one more, 2 more here. That's it. Bravada, Gummear, Pure Nickel, Dan Edwards, absolutely. Same story. We've got to sock it away for the nickel recovery. There's huge leverage in that stock. I've increased my position recently. I bought another 250,000 shares at $0.015. I'm planning on buying another 500,000 shares in November, December, if I can get it at $0.015. It's one of those situations that, you know, this is like Valterra, you know, these little penny stocks, good projects, low burn rate, not getting any work done, but they have assets, and there's a lot of leverage to the nickel and to the gold market, okay? So you have to deal with basically saying to yourself, okay, I'm buying in, there's not going to be a lot of news, but this is a high risk reward option on the price of nickel and or in what's the other one we were just talking about? Valterra's case with gold. So still feel the same way about that, Dan, and I've been buying more. I don't always update you guys when I do a little bit of this or that, and you just have to realize that generally speaking, I mean 9.9 times out of 10, if I don't give you an update in a while on something, nothing has changed since the last update. I mean, that's just simply the case. I tend not to circle back and say, hey, oh yeah, I got out of this a year ago, unless you missed some notification about that. Garibaldi, we've talked about, Elliot, and this really quickly, last one from Gert on First Vanadium. When do you expect news on metallurgical recoveries? Isn't that what's holding back the stock lately? I think that the metallurgical recovery information already has been very bullish. I mean, they're looking at plus, what, 95% recoveries on the metallurgy side with the latest news that came out in the summer. I think what it comes down to is what are they going to have to pay on the whole processing costs once they're going to build the mine. And we're not going to get that information for a little bit. And but, you know, a lot of that stuff is coming, and I don't foresee it. I really don't foresee those being a problem on either the metallurgical recoveries or processing costs of everything. So more color will be coming out. I think they're trying to improve the metallurgy even further, which would be incredible. And I don't think that's what's holding the stock back lately. You know, listen, I mean, the thing was up tenfold in a year, and it really had a big run starting in May. So I think a lot of this has just been digesting those gains. You know, we're still trending up to the right. As long as that continues, I don't think it's being held back. I think that, you know, it's healthy for these things to have consolidation periods before they go to the next level, and they continue to do that. There's a lot of good news coming for First Vanadium. I think the stock is going to rock soon. Orca remain very bullish. Gummear, you said 2 holes. I think there's 3. The appointment, GT Gold, of a special advisor. I don't know. I didn't see that news. I'm not sure how relevant that is. I'll have to look. Gold in general and uranium. I mean, I feel like, you know, uranium is looking much more encouraging. I would love to see it tick up into the 30s. I think that's going to be a psychological tipping point. And the fundamentals are, you know, you can't get away from massive supply destruction and not seeing, with any demand pullback, the price not rise. So uranium's been a question of not if, but when it's going to go up. And I think we're starting to see that now. I had been saying last year that I think we're going to see the chemical cuts and Kazakh and things are going to kick in the second half of 2018 when we're going to start to see the upticks. And that's been actually pretty accurate so far. And I expect it to accelerate in 2019. Gold, I don't pretend to have a short-term feel for whether we're going to go up $100 or down $100 first. I really don't have a lot of confidence either way. And frankly, I actually don't really care. And I say that only because it's going to do what it's going to do. The dollar strength has been very uncharacteristic with what's going on in our world and on our balance sheet. And I think it's temporary. So you can end up having a spike in the dollar, which causes gold to go down $100 briefly, but it's not going to last. I do believe very confidently that gold is going to be skewed higher in the coming years, and it's going to go much higher. And when it starts to really kick into gear, it's going to happen very fast, and it's going to be trading better than it is right now. Even though we've had some spikes recently, I think we'll know when it's go time, and it's going to be, we're going to see more follow through on gold, and then I will feel better about it. I mean, I made a call back in April on the Palisade Radio Conference when it was like 1335 that we were going to go over 1400 by the end of May. And I was wrong about that. We got very close and it stopped. So I'm not sweating too much where gold's going to go between now and the end of the year. I think it's higher next year. I do believe it goes through 1400 next year. I do. I feel very good about that. And then again, my target once we do go through 1400 is that we go over 1600 within a matter of weeks to a couple of months. Gatling exploration, I don't know anything about. I'll have to look at that. And on Timberline, you know, they're going to hopefully have some more drill results. They're trying to raise a little bit of money. And I just simply am not participating in this one. They've got some new people involved. We're going to see what they can do on that front. Go do some more drilling, and then you know, I'll keep you guys posted. They look like they're onto something potentially big at Elder Creek. The package of properties at Eureka, Elder Creek, Paiute, lots of value, lots of potential in Nevada in this Battle Mountain trend. I can't wait for a name change, a few board changes, some management changes, and a new story at Timberline to surface around these exciting assets. And guys, that's been over an hour and a half today, so I think some of you are piling off as well. I'm going to end it there. I hope some of this was helpful. What I will do is I'm going to go through, I probably hit at least 2/3 of the questions, and I'm sure a lot of the last third are redundant with the same companies. So I'm just going to blaze through that this weekend. I'll let people digest this first video and get most of it out of the way, and then I'll have the second one followed up. Hopefully I'll get that out like Sunday night, and we'll touch on anybody who I didn't get to yet. I literally went in chronological order, so the last question that I touched on with Gert was from yesterday, so I haven't gotten to anybody who moved on the email today. So that's it for now, guys. Listen, at the end of the day, my message is to think longer term. Think longer term and think big. And when something that we like is on sale, don't be afraid to take action. If you're reasonably educated in the investment business, then, and you're not a complete beginner relying on everything somebody else says, listen to your instincts, you know, especially on these really small ones where I'm the only guy covering it, like Valterra. You know, you look at it and you say to yourself, wow, what's going on with this thing? But then again, it's at $1 million market cap. A public vehicle in Canada is worth $1 million. So they have 3 assets and 0 value on the assets. That's what literally Valterra is sitting at right now. This is like when we found Gummear. I found Gummear at a $500,000 market cap. Can you believe that? And their burn rate was less than my one-day burn rate or week burn rate. It was like 15, 20 grand a month, and they were clinging on by their fingertips. But when we stepped in and said, well, we're not going to let this go out of business, so why not take the shot? There's a lot of upside. Valterra is not going to go out of business. They have the Mannix group behind them. They have us behind them. So what's going to happen? It's not going to go to 0. If it starts printing at a penny and you can buy some at a penny, buy it at a penny. Buy it at 4.5 pennies, buy it at 2 cents. There's huge leverage in stocks like that. But even with Orca or some of the bigger companies or McEwen, when they're down and you know, things are not looking the brightest, fundamentally, these are extremely well-run companies with great assets run by winners. So you can feel good about adding to those positions, taking advantage of weakness, better positioning yourself to make more money when things do improve, and do it in small pieces, phases, you know, so that if it lasts longer than you would like, you still have some staying power with some extra bullets in the quiver when things do finally turn. But have a good night, everybody.